feet on the streets, boots on the ground. It's so important because honestly, we realize a couple of things in those periods of time. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome, one of the things that you come to realize when you're actually doing the work, going through the motions, even if you don't know what those motions are, is that you have had some experience that's prepared you for that moment. And also there's a reason that you're there. And so kind of feeding off of that, looking back at, this is what I've done before, and this is how those lessons translate, and nothing is by mistake. I think a lot of times we think that our experiences are irrelevant or in silo. One of the things that you just explained so eloquently and that you state also in your book is that there are no mistakes. There's just a journey, there's just a process, and there's just the work. Yep. And so even when you don't have the answers, we talk about this a lot on confidence conversations, you don't always have to know the how, you just have to know the what, and get there and do it. Just work through the yellow brick road. It lights up one brick at a time. And before you know it,
100% agree. 100% agree. In the class I teach at the University of Chicago, I created a class there called Women as CEOs, Investors, Directors, and Executives. And the cases are from a panoply of industries, but they all have female protagonists and they're all strategy cases. So it's, wrestling with some strategic imperative. But in every single one of those cases, they don't talk about how Maggie Wilderauer, who's brilliant and amazing, had an IQ of X. They talk about how her, entrepreneurial father taught her and her sisters about a job jar and how that set the stage for so much of her attitude about working hard and hard work. And all of these other, Valerie Jarrett was an incredible guest speaker. And she was also very transparent about her, moments in her life where she had the confidence crisis and how she overcame it. But ultimately, it's about doing the work. Sometimes it's not glamorous. When she knew she was compelled to work for Mayor Washington, she took a job, major pay cut from a white glove law firm into the, the bowels of City Hall. And she knew it was the right thing for her to do because it was where her heart was calling her to go. But it's this concept I try to instill in my students over and over again. There's no elevator there's no instant speed button to the penthouse for success. It's like, and there's joy in the work. There's value in the work and there's growth in the work. And I guess I just never had the fantasy. I mean, you even ask great actors and actresses in Hollywood. Everyone says, "Oh, you had this big break." No, there were a series of commercials and busted, documentaries, et cetera, that got them to the place where the Dazed and Confused is Matthew McConaughey's moment to become an international icon, right? But there were a million things up to that point. And I think that that's the piece that can be fantasized or glossed over in this social media era. It's just, there's no substitute for the work. And if you go in expecting it and looking forward to it, in my experience, my experience, that's from where the confidence comes. Yeah.
And Alyssa, you raise a really good point as well, because that's kind of how you find out whether or not you're in the right industry and whether you're pursuing purpose and passion. Because there will be no fun in the work if you don't actually enjoy the industry that you're in and what you're doing. And so a lot of times we have these monetary goals or, these different things that we're aspiring to, but the work and the process of getting there is something that's so far from what we should be doing with our lives that the work is not fun. And so we're looking for 100%. The overnight success rather than enjoying the process and the journey, because it's the journey that makes it.
I couldn't agree more.
Of, the journey, sometimes we just have to start.
100%.
Do things. And I love life hack number 100 because I struggled with this for a while, perfectionism, and not letting perfectionism be the enemy of progress. So can you speak to how that's played a part in your life and in your work?
Yeah, I think the most obvious example of that is that I will, for major decisions, always probably have 80% of the information I would ever want to have. 20, that this notion of perfect information to make perfectly informed decisions, I think is a fallacy. And so trusting that you can do it with 80% of what you need or less, but preferably 80%, is this idea of, I'm not a B student, I was an A student. Let's be very clear. I expect A results, but I'm not always going to have the perfect amount of time to get something done. I'm not always going to have the perfect set of inputs to know a conversation with every potential competitor about their strategic plan, right? You have to make assessments with the best information you can in terms of how you run a business, the strategies you pursue, the people you hire, et cetera. Joel Peterson, one of my great mentors, and an incredible human being. He was the chairman of JetBlue and head of the Hoover Institute at Stanford. He's an incredible man. You know, he says the best of the best get hiring right 7 out of 10 times. That means the best of the best, because even if you're hiring people on paper 10 out of 10 times because you have enough experience and smarts that have the right skills, you're only going to get the fit right 7 out of 10 times. So that's not perfection. That's like really far from perfection. And I always admire my husband. He had in 1990 a batting average of 340, which was incredibly high. I've since learned about baseball. That's a 660%, that's a 66% failure rate. Like, he was one of the best in the entire Major League Baseball in 1990, and he failed 66% of the time. So this idea that you can't expect perfection winning, every time, but it's what you do with it. I always say to entrepreneurs who are coming to me for advice, you're looking for yeses, not nos. You have to let those 99 no's roll off your back like a duck. You have to learn from them and adapt and take something from them. But it's that one yes that you're looking for, and everything else is just seaweed in a dark, dark ocean. And I think that that's an attitude and that's an approach. And I know that it's one that, as an athlete, I came by naturally. As a, self-driven young woman, I came by naturally. But I love Winston Churchill's quote on this. I've quoted it too much in the pandemic because it's just unbelievably applicable. But this idea that, failure is not fatal. Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Mm-hmm. And it's the courage to continue that counts. It's the guts to say, I have a goal. I might fall and stumble a bunch of times in getting there, but I'm going to keep my eye on the prize of what I'm going toward, expect those falls, learn from them, dust myself off, and keep going. That, to me, is following your dream. And that big goal out there for me, each phase of my life has been pretty scary and big and hairy and not obvious. And it therefore isn't going to be easy, but it's the courage to continue that counts. And, and that other cliche phrase, but if you shoot for the moon, at least you'll land amongst the stars, right? You got to just go for it. What happens if I fall and break